Do you guys even know how it goes?
The Lord is my shepherd.
The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want.
I memorized it, but I forgot.
Yeah, that's the one you memorized for D group, right? Okay.
Yeah, I remember that.
God is my shepherd, I won't be wanting.
Soothing.
Yeah.
I prefer Proverbs.
Really?
Proverbs?
Proverbs?
We're gonna go over Proverbs next week.
If I had to choose, I'd probably because I don't really like Proverbs.
Yeah, Proverbs is pretty hard too. All right, so let's go into it. Okay, let's try to see how to actually read the Book of Psalms, and what does it mean for us in 2023. Yeah. The Book of Psalms, a collection of inspired Hebrew prayers and hymns, is probably for most Christians, the most best known and the most loved portion of the Old Testament. But frequently, the Psalms present special difficulties for understanding. Okay? Since the poetic features of rhythm and repetitive meter takes very different form in Hebrew poetry, and more importantly, are virtually always lost in English translation. So there's two parts, right? The first part is it's poetic in nature. So you guys already know that poetry in itself is pretty hard to read. But not only that, the forms of it's Hebrew poetry. It's not poetry that most of us grew up learning in our English classes about American poetry, right? And so because of that, there's always things that and then on top of that, it was Hebrew, and it changes into English, but it's poetic language. So the meaning of it, it's lost. And so some things we read it and we're like, what does that mean? Like that means,
Sure.
Yeah.
Hebrew is,
it doesn't really make sense to us. Like today in our sermon, we're going to go over a phrase called gird up your loins. Okay, but it's like, we don't use that.
Yeah.
Like we have no idea what that means. Okay, we're going to talk about that. But again, things like that where it's like, what does that mean? You know, but for the original hearers, they understood exactly what that meant. But 2,000 years a year later for us, we're like, what's going on here? All right.
Further difficult with interpretation arises primarily from their nature. Because the Bible is God's word, many Christians automatically assume that all its content, all that it contains, are words from God to people. Thus, they fail to recognize that the Bible also contains words spoken to God or about God, which is what the Psalms do, and that these words too are God's word. That is because Psalms are basically prayers and hymns. By their very nature, they are addressed to God or express truth about God in song.
Yeah, so the Psalms and the prophets are totally different because Psalms, it's most of it, about 99% of it, it's God speaking to people, right? And we go, oh yeah, that's like the word of God. But the book of Psalms, it's opposite. It's not God speaking to us, but what? It's human beings talking to God or talking about God. Okay, so we can't forget that fact. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not divinely inspired. Okay, we still believe, even though it was people speaking about God and to God, okay, but we still believe those are words, God's words as well. But we do need to remember, okay, these are not words spoken from God. These are words spoken about God from other Christians or other believers. Okay. Let's keep going. Ellen?
So how do these words spoken to God function as a word from God to us? They should not function primarily for the teaching of doctrine or moral behavior. Yet they are helping us to express ourselves to God and to consider God's way. It's helpful for those who look to the Bible for help in expressing joys and sorrows, successes and failures, hopes and regrets, and or simply to worship.
Yeah. So even if you lose, we're going to go over a lot of different things, but if you you don't understand it, it's fine. But if you understand this paragraph right here, the last paragraph right here, then you kind of get it. Okay? This is like the main thing. Okay? The way for us to understand these Psalms. Okay? And that was the most important thing. Okay? And if you didn't come early enough to hear that, then
you're lost.
too bad.
You guys
You're gonna be the least,
They didn't even hear that.
the least in the kingdom of God, right?
They're the least in the kingdom of God. Okay, so once again, if you're reading the book of Psalms as, oh, what can I learn about God? Doctrine, which is doctrine. Or if you're reading the book of Psalms, it's like, oh, the book of Psalms will tell me what's right and what's wrong. Then you're getting the book of Psalms all wrong. Does that make sense? If you want to get teachings, then go to the Gospels. Okay? Or go to the law. Because they will give you very specific teachings about who God is. Okay? And moral behaviors. The book of Psalms is really about what? It's really about how we can express ourselves to God. Okay? That's what it's all about. Okay? And then expressing joys, sorrows, success, failure, hope, regrets. Basically, to be a human being. Right? So if you want to learn how to do that, or how other people did it, then Book of Psalms is the best. So sometimes, we're going to talk about this later, sometimes, we don't know how to express ourselves very well. Especially men, we're just not very expressive, emotionally. We just haven't really learned to do that very well. Most guys. Some guys are excellent at it.
Yeah, some people it's an extremity.
Okay, so if that's hard, then one of the ways you can do that is actually reading the Psalms and making that your prayer instead. Okay, so one author said, I think it was Tim Keller or somebody else, said that the book of Psalms is like God's notes of the people that he was counseling.
Interesting.
Yeah, like a counselor's book, and these are all the things that people have said to God. And he's writing down notes. So think of it kind of like that. Okay, that's one way to think about it. Okay. All right. So, but before we go into more of the hermeneutics, again, all of us are interested in the hermeneutics. What does it mean for me now? How can I use the book of Psalms to make me feel good? Before we do that, we have to first understand the book of Psalms in the beginning. Okay, Psalms as poetry. Luis?
Mm-hmm. The most important item to remember in reading or interpreting Psalms is that they are poems, musical poems. Hebrew poetry, by its very nature, was addressed to the mind through the heart. Therefore, the language is intentionally emotive. Therefore, the reader must be careful not to over-exaggerate Psalms by finding special meanings in specific words or phrases.
Right. So we just have to be careful because, again, they're exaggerating. Right? Because that's what poetry does. That's what, music. That's what you see in music as well. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? Okay. So we have to be careful not to over-exaggerate. Okay, find special meaning. Okay, we'll give you an example of this. Okay. No, it's a. That's exactly what I was gonna say. Yeah. Okay, Zipporah.
The second one?
Yeah, the second one. Yeah.
While the Psalms contain and reflect doctrine, they are not intended to be origins of doctrinal exposition. For example, and in sin my mother conceived me. The writer is hardly trying to establish the doctrine that conception is sinful, or that original sin applies to unborn children. The psalmist has employed hyperbole, purposeful exaggeration, in order to express strongly and vividly that he is a sinner.
Yeah, so that's a good example of that, right? Again, it's poetry. Because Psalms 51 is all about when David committed adultery, right? So the whole psalm is about how badly he messed up and how badly he needs God. So he's exaggerating. He's basically saying, I am so sinful that even as a baby, even when I was conceived, I'm a sinner. But again, you could see how some people could take that literally. And they use that as a debate. They go, oh, you see? That means we're born sinners. Okay? So even little tiny, even the, tiny fetus within there, sinner. Okay? And they need Jesus. And if they don't, they're going to go to hell. This kind of thing. Okay? So again, okay, Psalms, we have to understand, it's musical poetry. And so we can't take things too literally. Okay, do they give us information about who God is and things like that? Absolutely. Okay, But to try to derive theology from just the Psalms is very dangerous. Does that make sense? Okay. And that's why, I'll give you a common example of this. So this is sometimes what we do, because a lot of the people nowadays, a lot of Christians don't read the Bible. A lot of their theology actually comes from a lot of the songs that we sing. Okay? But the thing is, some of the songs, yes, some of them are biblically based, but some of them are loosely based. Okay? And some of the theology of the songs that we sing might not be very biblical. And so we have to be careful. But again, a lot of the Christians, they don't read the Bible for themselves, but they're hearing a lot of words while singing or looking at the lyrics, right? And so, they go, yes, God is reckless. Right? He recklessly loves me. Okay? Things like that. Okay? But they don't understand what that, again, what did the author mean when he wrote that? And is that biblical? Okay, we don't think about that. Okay? So again, that's an example of sometimes what we can do with Psalms as well. Does that make sense? Again, this is music. It's poetry. So we can't take it too literally. We have to understand the context as well. Okay? Let's keep going. Hannah?
The vocabulary of poetry is purposefully metaphorical. In the book of Psalms, mountains leap like rams. Enemies spew out swords from their lips, and God is variously seen as a shepherd, fortress, shield, rock. It is extremely important that you learn to listen to the metaphors and understand what they signify, and pause to reflect on the truths they convey. It's important that one not press metaphors or take them literally. If someone were to take Psalms 23 literally, they might assume that God wants us to act like sheep.
Okay? So again, you guys understand, right? When it comes to like poetry, a lot of these are metaphors. Okay? So again, it's very important when it comes to Psalms that we understand when it is metaphor, then we see it as metaphors. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay, let's keep going. All right, Psalms as function.
The Psalms were functional songs composed for use in worship by the ancient Israelites. Although some of them appear to have been intended for use by individual worshippers, many of them were intended for corporate use. Indeed, psalms were commonly used as worship aids by Israelites when they brought sacrifices to the temple in Jerusalem. Based on some of the titles, it seems likely that professional singers sometimes sang psalms during the time people were worshiping. Some people began to sing them in all sorts of situations where the wordings expressed their own attitudes and circumstances.
Yeah. So one of the ways to understand the book of Psalms, it's like how we have like hymnals, right? So like book of Psalms, for the Jewish people, they used it like hymnals. Yeah, they read it as poetry, but sometimes they would sing it. And they would use it in worship settings, just like you see what they're doing right now, right? So exactly, that's what they're doing. All right?
And they still do it. I went to some synagogues and they sing.
The Jewish
they
people.
sing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And some of our like songs that we sing are based off of these
That's
psalms
true.
as well. Yeah. Okay, let's keep going.
Understandably, it is not possible to date most of the Psalms with certainty. The ambiguity, however, is not in this case a significant
Exegetical.
exegetical problem. The Psalms are remarkably applicable to all times. David wrote almost half the Psalms, 73 in total, and Moses wrote 1, and Solomon wrote 2. After the Israelites returned from exile and rebuilt the temple, the book of Psalms were apparently made a formal collection, almost a temple hymnal. What? Moses wrote? I'm stuck in there.
What?
He wrote a psalm?
Mhm.
Which one is it?
The Moses one. I have the reference if you want me to show you. But he talks about like the Exodus and the splitting of the sea and stuff. Yeah,
Wow,
absolutely.
interesting.
All right, let's keep going.
From the New Testament, we see that Jews in general, and Jesus and his disciples in particular, knew the Psalms well. The Psalms continue to be part of their worship.
Yeah. Okay, so by the time Jesus arrives, we see him quoting from. Okay, so and a lot of the Gospels actually have a lot of the Psalms as well. Okay, any questions?
No, just something I want to add.
Yeah.
On whenever they did their Last Supper or whatever, or whenever they went out, it says somewhere in the Bible they sang a hymn with the new word. And so some of the songs that they sang during Passover, I believe the reference was like Psalms 113 through Psalms 118. So they would sing all those at Passover.
No, so these are, again, when it says, they song and stuff like that, it was probably from the book of Psalms. Okay. So really quickly, just with people next to you guys, kind of just anything interesting, anything intriguing, go for it. What are you thinking so far?
Yeah, I was very surprised with Moses writing
Yeah.
Psalm. I thought Psalms were like all written by David.
No.
I didn't know Solomon also wrote it. I thought Solomon just wrote the how is it wrote in English?
Book of Lamentations.
Lamentations, yeah. Interesting.
Psalm 90.
Psalm 90?
Okay, that's
Nine
Moses.
zero?
Yeah.
90.
Mm-hmm.
That was written by Moses.
Mm-hmm.
And the two that are written by Solomon.
Google it.
Oh snap! Gonna have to do.
Google it. Yeah, I have the references in the book. I don't have the book right now. Okay. Any questions so far? Are we good? Okay, so now let's go to the fun part where we actually get to the different types of psalms, okay? There's obviously, we're going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're going to go over 7 of them, but obviously there's more than these types, okay? So let's go over it. Is it Danny? Or did you already read? Okay, my turn. It is possible to group psalms into 7 different categories. Lament, what is lament? Being sad, okay? So, being sad. Thanksgiving, you guys got that one, right? Like giving thanks to God. What's praise?
Like worshiping?
Yeah, worshiping, right? Thanks is kind of like, I thank you. Praise is like, I think you're awesome. Okay, I think this is who you are. And you're worthy of my praise, kind of a thing. Because I could thank somebody, but I don't have to worship them. I could say, oh, thank you, Abel, for helping me out or buying me food, but that doesn't mean I worship you. Right. Next one, salvation history. What do you think? That's pretty explanatory, right? It goes over, like, for example, like Exodus, right? So it talks about, this psalm talks about how, God brought us out of Egypt and we were slaves, and he opened the Red Sea, and because of that we were able to cross. And so it's just like songs about history, yet it's like it's made into song. Okay. Next one is a little bit hard because the words, it's called celebration and affirmation, but it has nothing to do with celebration. Or it's celebrating, okay, what like the covenant that God has made. Okay. Or it's affirming some kind of king. So it's celebrating how God has chosen a specific king. Okay. Wisdom, that one's pretty self-explanatory. So it's very similar to like Proverbs. Okay. And the last one, trust. It's like, I trust in you, God, because you have been a good God to me. These kind of things. Okay, though these categories may overlap somewhat and have subcategories, they serve well to classify the Psalms and thus to guide the readers towards good use of them. So yeah, this is one of the fun things that you could do. As you're reading Psalms, you can kind of go, okay, what category is this in? Because sometimes we read it and we're like, okay, next, kind of a thing. But it's kind of fun activity to be a little more aware. Okay, what's going on? Okay, is this a lament? Or is this thanksgiving? Is this praise? Okay, and some of them kind of has a structure. And we're going to go over 2 of them. Okay, we're going to go over the structure of a lament and structure of thanksgiving. Okay. Okay, in order to illustrate how knowing a psalm's form and structure helps us to appreciate its message, here's an example of lament. Okay, Psalms chapter 3. And the 6 of them is address, like who are you addressing? Like, who are you talking to? Like, dear God, these kind of things. Complaint, explanatory. Trust, explanatory, self-explanatory. Deliverance, assurance, and praise. Okay? So, I want you to go to the Psalms, book of Psalms, and go to Psalms 3. It's not too long. It's only 8 verses. Okay? And I want you to, on the side, put down the verses where it does the address, complaint, trust, all of that. Okay? And then after you are done, with partners next to you guys, compare and contrast and see if you guys have the same Bible verses.
30, right?
No, 3.
Oh.
Psalms 3. Okay, so get together with partner if you're done with the structure. Okay, what verses do you see doing the address? What verse is the complaint? What verse is the trust?
So the address is in Psalm of David when he fled from Absalom, the son of Ukraine. That's the address. The complaint is, Lord, how you increased those who trouble me. Many enemies will rise up against me. Many are they who say to me, there is no help or him from God. In God. And then it goes to the trust. But you, Lord, are a shield from my hand, and one who lifts up my hand. And then if I can go to my eyes and refuge from the days of deliverance, as I lay down and slept, I awoke with the Lord sustaining me. So according to the assurance, I will not be afraid of 10,000 of people who have set themselves against me all around. And then the phrase, arise, O Lord, save me, O my God, for you have struck all my enemies on the cheekbone, you have broken the teeth of the ungodly. Salvation belongs to the Lord, your blessing is upon your people. That follows the formula.
Yeah.
Almost to the T. Except for 7, got a question. Assurance. Because he kind of says, save me. And there's assurance in a little
What do you refer to? What verse?
7.
7.
Yeah. Arise, O Lord, save me, oh my God. For he has struck all my enemies on the cheekbone.
All right, y'all ready? Y'all ready? You feel confident? Okay, let's do address. What verse?
First one.
Verse 1. Where does it say that?
Lord.
Yeah, Lord, right there. So it gives you the address right there. Okay, that's pretty easy, right? All right, next one, complaint. What verse to what verse?
Isn't it the beginning of
Good. It's verse 1 through
Yeah.
2.
Yeah.
Okay, is the complaint. Okay, and then trust.
3.
3 through.
6.
Okay, 3 through 6.
Oh shoot, really?
Okay. So trust is 3 through 6. So it's trusting you are a shield. I cry out and you answer me. So that there's a trust. I lay down and I can wake up again. Oh, I trust God. Okay, I'm not afraid. Okay, those are all trust. I trust in you. That's why I can do all of these things. Okay, next one, deliverance.
4.
That's why I initially put
7.
Okay, 7. Okay, first part of 7 is deliverance. Rise up, save me. So it's asking for what? Deliverance, deliver me. Okay,
The one before too, I cried to the Lord and He answered me.
yeah, that's part of the trust.
Okay.
But, you know, we don't have to be too technical. Yeah, some of these do jump around, but most of the part, it actually goes in order. Yeah, there's a structure, specific structure. Yeah. Assurance.
3, 5.
8.
I haven't seen, no.
So I guess 8 technically if it's in order, but really trust feels like it could also be assurance in the way it's stated in 3.
Yeah, yeah. It is, yeah. But here, the assurance is 7b. Second part of B. You strike all my enemies on the cheek. You break the teeth of the wicked.
So more like assurance that he'll deliver.
Yeah, it's like this assurance that he'll deliver. And that's what we mean by assurance. And then the last part, praise.
8.
8, yeah, salvation belongs to the Lord. May your blessing be on your people. Shalom.
Got like 50%.
You got 50?
50.
Okay, so what can we learn from just this hymnal? Okay, so again, it's going to teach us how we can express ourselves better to God. So let's see. Much can be learned from the lament, such as Psalms 3. The importance of balanced prayer is at the top of the list. Okay, we see a balance. Okay, we see all sorts of stuff happening. But sometimes, a lot of times, what do? Our prayer is just all complaints. Or our prayers are no complaints whatsoever because we're like, oh, we can't say negative things to God. So all we can do is just praise, 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 praise. Okay. So, but you see a balance of all of these things happening. Second one, complaint by, balanced. Request should be balanced by appreciation. Complaints by expression of confidence. So again, that's the balance. You see, yeah, there's complaint, there's a problem. And yet, there's some trust in God as well. There's some assurance as well. Note how freely and strongly David is inspired to the words of complaint and appeal. Okay, have you guys ever complained like this to God before? Okay. Is this how expressive you are in your complaints? Is this how descriptive you are? So again, it kind of shows you. Okay, number one, David was a very emotional man, number one. Okay. But still, it kind of shows us the level of which we could express ourselves to God as well. But again, this is not like a shameful thing, but again, it gives us kind of a template. And sometimes we have a hard time doing that. Okay? So this can be a template for you to use. Okay? The more you actually start praying this exactly, then you could kind of change the wording and make it more your own as well. This example of honesty leads us to be more willing to express ourselves to God more openly. Next.
The Psalms, however, is not designed specifically to instruct, but to be used as a guide. We read and reflect on this very psalm when we are at wit's end, discouraged, seemingly surrounded by problems, feeling defeated, such Such a psalm will help us to express our thoughts and feelings and to rely on God's faithfulness.
Yeah. So again, these are really, really great. Maybe you feel really down, you feel really defeated, you feel like he talks about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, what is this? It gives you a context, right? There's a subtitle for the psalm. It says, Psalm of David when he flees from his own son, Absalom. Okay, so you have a problem with your own family member, someone that you love is your enemy. Like, imagine what the psychology of that. Like, what, you know what I mean? And then, again, then you read that and you go, what is he going through psychologically? And he's able to express some of these things. Like, he's saying, I lie down and sleep, I wake again. It's like, how can you even fall asleep when your own son is about to kill you?
Right.
But he's saying, that's how much I trust God. And yet, there's also complaint too. My foes are increasing. Like, God, why are you doing that? So you can see a depth of emotion and depth of how honest he is. And again, that's something that we can do. Okay? So again, the book of Psalm is great for those things. And that's why a lot of people really appreciate Psalms. Because they really feel like it's very human. But it gives us freedom to express ourselves more freely too. Because some of us grew up saying, oh, you can't say negative things to God. Or just negativity in general, emotionally, you can't express those things. Maybe your parents told you, oh, don't be angry. Don't express that. Only say positive things. But again, that's not biblical. Okay. And this is just actually one of the more calm psalms. One of the lesser lament. Okay, there's like, if you go to like chapter 2 and chapter 1, I guess, especially chapter 2, And like even when Jesus was dying on the cross and he says, my God, why have you forsaken me? That's actually a direct quotation from Psalms. Okay, and Jesus uses that. Okay, so let's shift and go to a Thanksgiving psalm. Okay, so yes, we need to express our sadness, but we also need to learn to express our happiness as well. Okay, so let's go into that. Luis.
Thanksgiving psalms have a different structure, as may be expected because they have a different purpose in what they express. The elements of the Thanksgiving psalm are as follows: introduction, distress, appeal, deliverance, testimony. Thanksgiving psalms concentrate on appreciation for past mercies.
Okay, so let's go to Psalms 128, and same thing, we're going to do the same exact thing. Okay, we're going to see the different structure and different elements within the structure and try to identify which verses are which. Okay, so do it first by yourself, and then afterwards, do it with partners next to you.
Yeah, this one's really fast.
I'm
like,
guessing it goes from one.
like, I don't know what this is.
Yeah.
I got the introduction. That's all I got.
My tab dropped on the introduction.
Try your best. Yeah, some of the wording like distress, it kind of throws you off. So, but don't worry, we'll go over it together. We'll go over it together.
We're talking about like our modern day distress or like a different kind of.
I want you guys to struggle with it. I want you guys to be in distressed.
Positive distress.
Okay, so let's go over introduction. I'm gonna read it for you guys. Okay, introduction is the Psalms testimony of how God has helped is summarized. It's like the summary. Okay. It kind of gives you kind of a summary. Introduction gives you kind of the summary. So what is it? Do you guys know? What verses?
Number one.
It's 1 and 2.
But you said how God has helped,
Mm-hmm.
like past tense.
Yes, it's summarized.
But 2 is future.
I know, but this is what the book says.
That's it.
It's like,
So,
will be.
so is number 3 the distress when he talks about the wife?
Bingo!
Oh!
Bingo.
That's distress.
Okay, so distress is described like this. The situation from which God gave deliverance is portrayed. However, in this verse, it doesn't do this very well. Okay?
So which was his distress?
So there is no distress. There's no distress in this one.
What about the one that Luis said?
They chose this one because it's short. Okay, appeal is the psalm reiterate the appeal that has been made to God, which is what?
4. Behold.
Behold, the man shall be blessed.
Just throw anything out there.
Distressed.
6.5.
Oh, hey, you know what happened?
You get the wrong verse.
I gave you the wrong verse.
Dude, that's
Okay, sorry, my bad. Let's go. It's 138, not 128. That makes a lot. It makes a lot more sense, huh?
Wasn't we to rank the authors?
138.
138?
138. My bad. It makes a lot more sense now. Okay, so try again.
Verse 3 is the distress.
No! Dang it. Yeah, verse 3 is distress though.
Ah, there it is. It is.
Yeah, think of like introduction just like an introduction to the whole thing. Oh, that makes so much more sense.
You're like
Even I was reading, I was like, that makes zero sense. Much easier, huh? Much easier. You see, I gave you guys that on purpose so that you could identify. I think the previous. What do you think the previous one was? You think that was praise? You think that one was Thanksgiving too? A lot more praise.
More Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving?
For the wife, for the children.
Or do you think it was trust? Like I trust you? There's more praise, praisey.
like Thanksgiving and praise.
Yeah. Mixture of them.
It's a hybrid.
Hybrid. Okay, so let's do it. Introduction. What verses? 1 and 2. Distress? 3. It doesn't give you the distress, but it says, on the day I called, you answered. So it's saying, when I was in distress, you rescued. Okay. And then next one is appeal.
4 to 6.
4 to 5.
45?
45, yeah.
45? Okay, according to this, it's 3b. So you increase strength within me.
3B.
3.
Wait, 3D?
3b, the second part of
3B.
B. Yeah, 3b. Uh-huh.
Can you read the definition of appeal?
Yeah.
Okay, the appeal is also contained in verse 3. God is praised for having graciously responded to David's distress. So the appeal is reiterate the appeal that has been made to God.
And that's the B or D?
3b,
B.
the second part of B. 3, verse 3.
You answered.
Yeah.
Because mine was also.
So it shows you that what God has done. You increase the strength within me.
So appeal is not like a request to do something.
Yeah, it's you have already answered that request.
I think the English definition of these words,
throwing
yeah,
us
it's
off.
throwing me off. Like appeal, like, yeah, when you.
Don't worry, you guys will all get 100 points, okay? Okay, you guys will all get A's on this. Okay.
Deserve it.
All right, deliverance. Okay, deliverance.
Undeserved.
Deliverance. Okay, deliverance is the deliverance God provided is described. This one it's what it sounds like.
7?
Deliverance. Okay, 7 is part of it.
4 to 7?
Not 4 to 7. Deliverance. So it's 6 and 7. 6 and 7 is deliverance.
Yeah, you're missing an entire
4 and 5 is the last part.
testimony.
Testimony.
What?
Word of so testimony is word of praise for God's mercy is given.
So 4, 5, and 8?
4, 5, and 8. Yes.
4, 5.
Yeah. Word of praise for God's mercy. So testimony is about God's mercy. And deliverance is about the deliverance God has provided. Okay. So when you're reading Thanksgiving, don't worry about the structure, okay? Okay. Good practice, guys. All right, Zephora, if you could read the next one for us. Zephora. I can't say it. Zephora.
What grand expectations of our relationship to God a Thanksgiving song like Psalm 138 contains. How useful it can be in marshaling our own thoughts and feelings when we reflect on the faithfulness God has shown us over the years.
Yeah. So again, if you have difficult time, if you're always just like, thank you God for the weather, and you move on, then again, this kind of gives you a better summary of what God has done in the past, how God has delivered now, what's going on now, and things like that. Okay? So again, the important thing is these things are going to help you as you pray. That's a big thing. All right. So let's go over the hermeneutical principles. So again, what's hermeneutics?
How it applies to us?
Now, how it applies to us now. Let's do it.
Yeah, literally, I don't even know what that was.
Balen?
From the use of the Psalms both in ancient Israel and the New Testament church, we can see 3 important ways in which Christians can use them. 1. The Psalms can serve as a guide to worship. It can be used to express his or her thoughts and feelings. When a psalm touches on a topic or a theme that we wish to express it to the Lord, it can help us express our concerns in spite of our own lack of skill to find the right word.
Yeah, so we this is a reiteration, right? We kept talking about it throughout. Okay? So it's a good way for us to express, for us to worship. And then sometimes it's worship through sorrow. Sometimes it's worship through thankfulness. Okay. Next. Lesia?
The Psalms demonstrate to us we can relate honestly to God. How to be open in expressing joy, disappointment, anger, and other emotions. On this point, they do not so much provide doctrinal instruction, rather they give an example in the godly articulation of even our strongest feelings.
Right. Again, and this is, you have to be careful, okay? A lot of these songs are psalms or poetry. So don't take it too literally and try to say, oh, because they said this, it must be okay. Like for example, there's a psalm that a lot of people are very troubled by, but he's basically like, God, I am so angry that when I capture my enemy, I'm gonna dash their baby into the wall and kill him. Like that's how angry I am. And so people read that and they go, oh, this is so disturbing. Okay, like how it's in the Bible, so does that mean that killing baby is okay? No. So again, it's poetry. He's just describing how angry he is. Okay? So again, that doesn't mean that killing baby or you get so angry at your enemy that you dash their baby and crush their like that's not what the Bible is talking about there. Yeah, he's just being very honest about his emotions, and it's a one-on-one conversation, but again, we get a glimpse of the personal prayers that was given to God. All right, next one. The third.
Third, the Psalms demonstrate the importance of reflection and meditation on which God has done for us. They invite us to prayer, to control thinking on the discussion of God's word, meditation, mindfulness, and to reflective fellowship with other believers. Such actions help shape in us a life of purity and charity. The Psalms, like no other literature, lift us to a position where we can commune with God, capturing a sense of the greatness of His kingdom and a sense of what living with our Heavenly Father for eternity will be like. Even in our darkest moments, when life has become so painful as to seem unendurable, God is with us. Out of the depths of Psalm 131, we wait and watch for the Lord's deliverance, knowing we can trust in God in spite of our feelings. To cry to God for help is not a judgment on God's faithfulness, but an affirmation.
So the basic idea is it demonstrates what reflection or meditation should look like for us. So great example is what we went over in Psalms 3. He's saying situation is terrible. But even though a situation is terrible, I'm going to learn to reflect on God's truth. Or I'm going to meditate upon what God is doing. Or what God has done in the past. So again, when we go through difficult times, then we could learn to do the same thing. Okay? So it's related to what we talked about yesterday in Vespers too, right? You have to apply the truth. We have all these Satan's lies that comes to us, but there's truth, but a lot of times we don't know what that looks like. But Psalms teaches us, okay, I'm going through a very difficult time, but there's truth, and I need to hold on to this truth. How can we do that? Okay, so it's going to help us. It demonstrates what it means to reflect. Not just read the Bible, but reflect upon it. Reflect upon God's truth and how to apply that. Meditate upon it. So Psalms gives us an example of how to do that. And then last paragraph, and then we'll finish.
We conclude with a very important caution. The Psalms do not guarantee a pleasant life. It is a misunderstanding to infer from some of Psalms that God promises to make His believers happy and their lives trouble-free. David, who expresses in the book of Psalms God's blessing in the strongest terms, lived a life that was filled with frequent tragedy and disappointment. Yet he praises and thanks God enthusiastically at every turn, even in laments. Our Heavenly Father deserves praise for His greatness and His goodness in spite of and in the midst of our misery.
Yeah, the author is mentioning this is because a lot of the prosperity gospel people, they use Psalms to say, oh, you see, you trust in God and everything's going to be fine. You hold on to His promise, you claim His promise, and you're going to be rich and wealthy and everything else. This kind of things. Okay, 128. 128. Okay. So, but the book of Psalms, it gives us, yes, there are times of happiness, but also, again, Psalm is full of lament and suffering and things like that. Okay. All right. Really quickly with people next to you guys, kind of just go over number 2 and 3, and then we'll finish off because we got to go. It's 12 o'clock. Okay, finish off.
Contribution to the Psalms. Yeah, that was great.